Imagine your own sister standing in front of your entire family, waving a contract, and demanding you pay her $5,500 in rent every month. Now imagine that same sister going pale white as a lawyer walks in 20 minutes later with proof that you actually own the entire building. That was me. And that was the day the golden daughter of my family learned that the quiet one she mocked, the one she called a failure, was the landlord holding her keys. The room froze. Some cousins laughed nervously. Others stared at the floor, avoiding eye contact. My sister Rebecca, the Harvard lawyer in her expensive navy suit, kept waiting for me to break down and beg. But I didn't. I sent one text, and that one text changed everything. Before I tell you exactly how that moment went down, take a second to subscribe if you enjoy stories about standing up for yourself with class. And let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from right now? I love seeing this community grow across different cities and time zones. Now let's rewind to the exact moment everything began. It was a Saturday afternoon in Chicago. We had gathered in my mother's living room, a room that still smelled faintly of cinnamon candles she always lit for holidays. 15 family members squeezed together on couches and folding chairs. We were there to settle a few details about my late grandmother's estate. Rebecca sat at the head of the room, in a position that looked more like a courtroom than a family meeting. She wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. In her hand was a leather folder filled with color-coded tabs. When my uncle finished a speech about family unity, Rebecca cleared her throat. She tapped her Mont Blanc pen against her notes. "Before we continue," she said, "there is one piece of business that affects all of us." Her eyes locked on mine. "Jessica, your rent situation." My stomach tightened, but I kept my face calm. "Your current rent is $1,800. She flipped a page, pulling out a graph. "Comparable units in your building, my building, are renting for at least $5,500. I have been subsidizing your lifestyle for years." Subsidizing. The word stung like a slap. Rebecca turned the chart toward the room. "Making sure everyone saw. That is nearly $45,000 a year I lose because of her. In 5 years. That is over 200,000. Aunt Linda gasped. Cousin Mark muttered "wow" under his breath. Rebecca smiled a thin, satisfied smile. "It is time you start paying what the market demands. Starting next month, your rent will be adjusted to $5,500. The room went silent. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. By 5, my uncle coughed into his fist. "That is a steep increase," he said. "It is market rate," Rebecca snapped. "Jessica works in property management. She more than anyone should understand how family discounts cannot last forever." She looked straight at me. "This is your chance to live by the values you always talk about." Across the room, someone chuckled. Another cousin whispered something I could not hear. All eyes were on me. Not one person spoke up. Not one person reminded her that I had paid on time, every single month, for years. Not one person cared that I was the one who helped Grandma with her finances every Sunday, while Rebecca was too busy closing mergers. Rebecca slid the new lease across the coffee table. "I will need your signature today." She lifted her chin. "It is sudden, yes, but surely. Even an entry-level property manager understands the importance of proper documentation." I looked at the paper. Then I looked at my phone. 3 years ago, I had made a decision that Rebecca never saw coming. And in that moment, I knew it was finally time she found out. Rebecca leaned back in her chair like she had just won a trial in court. The contract sat on the coffee table between us, heavy like a trap waiting to snap shut. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, some curious, some entertained, a few almost pitying. And that pity cut deeper than Rebecca's smug smile. She adjusted her blazer, the one with gold buttons that practically screamed money. "Jessica," she said sweetly, "you are 30 now. It is time you grew up and carried your own weight. You have been coasting far too long." Her voice had that fake concern tone she always used at family gatherings, the kind of tone that sounds like advice but feels like a knife. I stayed quiet, because that is what I always did. That was my role in this family. The quiet one. The underachiever. The one people forgot about until it was time to make comparisons. Growing up, every dinner was the same. Rebecca had just closed a massive case or landed a bonus. Everyone clapped. Then their eyes slid to me. And Jessica, how is that little job of yours? Little, always little. My aunt would tilt her head and sigh. Maybe someday you will find your true calling. I would just smile and nod, even when it burned inside. The truth was, I loved my work, walking through buildings, learning about property values, finding potential in places other people ignored. That excited me. But to my family, that passion was invisible. All they saw was the Harvard lawyer and the other sister who never measured up. Rebecca leaned forward now, her eyes locked on mine. I already have people lined up for your apartment, she said. Law students from Northwestern willing to pay $6,000 without blinking. So if you cannot sign today, I will need you out by the end of next month. My uncle shifted in his seat, uncomfortable. But no one defended me. Not one person reminded her that I had paid every bill on time for years. Not one person said out loud what everyone knew, that she had ignored maintenance issues for months, that she only cared when she could make herself look generous. It felt like the walls of that living room were closing in. For a second, I almost saw myself folding, signing the paper, living out the family script forever. The weak one, the grateful one, the one who could not stand up for herself. But that was the old Jessica. 3 years ago, something had shifted. Something Rebecca never saw coming. And I had kept it hidden, waiting for this exact moment. I glanced at the clock above the fireplace. Tick, tock. My phone buzzed softly in my pocket. 20 minutes had passed since I sent that text. The text Rebecca had no idea about. The text that would flip this entire room upside down. And just as I slipped my phone back, there was a knock at the door. Every head turned. Rebecca smirked, thinking it was a delivery or maybe a neighbor, but I knew better. Because I had been waiting for this knock for 3 long years. The knock echoed through the living room. Rebecca rolled her eyes, already annoyed at the interruption. "Can someone get that?" she said. Like she was still running the show, but I was already on my feet. My hands felt steady, almost too steady for the storm brewing inside me. I opened the front door, and there he was. Robert Chen, my lawyer, dark suit, leather briefcase, calm face that carried more authority than Rebecca's entire performance. "Good afternoon, Miss Miller," he said, nodding politely. "Sorry I am late. Traffic was a nightmare." I stepped aside, letting him in. The entire room shifted when he crossed the threshold. The air got heavier. The laughter and whispers died instantly. Rebecca's smile froze, like someone had just yanked the rug out from under her. "Jessica, what is this?" she demanded. "This is ridiculous." "A lawyer for a family meeting." My aunt shook her head in disapproval. "You should be grateful Rebecca even let you live there this long." Rebecca smirked again, trying to regain control. "Jessica, what exactly do you think this proves?" Robert did not flinch. He set his briefcase on the coffee table, right next to her untouched lease. "Actually, it proves quite a lot," he said calmly. Rebecca laughed, but her voice cracked at the edges. She turned to the room, desperate for backup. "She is trying to make a scene." My cousin Mark snorted under his breath. This scene felt very different from the one Rebecca planned. Robert clicked open his case, pulling out a thick folder. The kind of folder lawyers only bring when they mean business. The sound alone made my sister's face lose a shade of color. "What documents are those?" Rebecca asked sharply. "The only documents here are the leases I manage." Robert raised an eyebrow. Interesting choice of words. Manage. Not own. The silence in the room could cut glass. My uncle cleared his throat. "Rebecca, what does he mean by that?" She brushed it off. "Semantics. Jessica rents from me. Always has." Robert's lips curled in the smallest smile. "Actually, Miss Miller rents from Riverside Holdings LLC, and that company is owned by my client, me. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. The room erupted. What? Owned? Impossible. Rebecca's jaw actually dropped. She scrambled for her laptop, her lawyer instincts kicking in. This is nonsense. I control the family trust. Any sale of the property would have required my approval. Robert adjusted his tie. It required majority stakeholder consent. The trust held 51%. The other 49% belonged to private family shares. 3 years ago, those shares approved a sale, a clean transaction, fully legal, fully documented. Rebecca's fingers flew across her keyboard. When she pulled up the public records, her face turned the color of ash. The trust had sold the property 3 years ago, and the buyer was Riverside Holdings LLC. She whispered it like a curse. Her voice broke on the last word. Rebecca snapped her head toward me. You set this up. You tricked us. You tricked me. I looked her dead in the eyes. No, I just learned from the best. All those years you lectured about property law, all those speeches about market values. I was listening. Rebecca's hands shook as she slammed her laptop shut. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. The silence was louder than any argument she could make. And that was the exact moment I knew the power in the room had shifted. But what came next was even better. The silence after Rebecca shut her laptop was heavy. You could hear the old clock ticking above the fireplace. Every second felt like a drumbeat announcing her defeat. Robert cleared his throat, pulling out another document. For the record, he said, Miss Miller has been an excellent tenant, never missed a payment, kept the unit in great condition. The previous landlord had nothing but praise. Previous landlord. That phrase landed like a punch. My uncle leaned forward, confusion written across his face. Rebecca has always been the landlord, he said. Robert looked straight at him. No, she was the property manager for the trust. But 3 years ago, ownership changed hands. The trust sold their stake for market value. Rebecca froze, the color draining from her cheeks. She whispered the name of the buyer again. Riverside Holdings. She said it like she was tasting poison. Rebecca's voice cracked. You cannot just come in here and claim this. This is my building. I have the leases. Robert remained calm, flipping to the next page. Actually, it is Jessica's building. And Ms. Rebecca Hayes. You are currently paying $4,200 for a penthouse unit valued at $7,800 on today's market. The room gasped. My cousin Mark let out a low whistle. Even Aunt Linda, who always defended Rebecca, covered her mouth with her hand. Rebecca's eyes darted around the room, desperate for someone to back her up. Nobody spoke. Not one person. I leaned forward, my voice steady. You wanted me to live by market values. Rebecca. So let us live by them. Your rent will now be adjusted to $7,800. First, last, and security due immediately. Rebecca's face turned red, then white, then red again. You cannot do this, she snapped. This is extortion. No, I said, this is business. Successful people pay market rate. Remember, that was your line, not mine. Her hands shook as she clutched her legal pad. She tried to muster the courtroom tone that once intimidated everyone. But her voice wavered. This is family. You cannot just throw family out. Robert spoke before I could. Miss Miller has already chosen not to collect back payments. By market standards, you underpaid over $100,000 in the last 3 years. She is forgiving that amount. That is more than generous. The number landed like a bomb. My cousin muttered wholly under his breath. My aunt nearly dropped her glass. Rebecca's jaw trembled. You planned this, she whispered. All of it. I shook my head. No. I was going to give you 3 months to adjust. Quietly. Privately. But you had to make a show out of me. So here we are. Rebecca's eyes filled with something I had never seen on her face before. Fear. And that was the first time in my life I realized the tables had turned. But she had one more card to play.
Rebecca gripped her notepad so tightly the pages started to bend. She opened her mouth like she had something powerful left to say, but nothing came out. The room was silent, waiting, expecting one last dramatic fight. But there was no fight left in her. She lowered her eyes, and for the first time in my life, my sister looked small. I leaned back in my chair, and for once I did not feel like the overlooked one. I felt steady, I felt grounded, and I finally felt like the person my grandmother had always told me I could be. I spoke slowly, making sure every word landed. Rebecca, you wanted me to pay market rate. You told the family I was living off your generosity. Now we know the truth. I was never your burden. You were my tenant. Rebecca's head snapped up, her face pale, her lips trembling. Tenant. The word echoed in the room like a gavel strike. Everyone heard it. Everyone understood it. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to.
Because real power does not shout. It simply reveals itself. And in that moment, everything Rebecca thought she knew about me shattered. I closed the folder, slid it across the table, and looked straight into her eyes. You have 72 hours to decide. Pay the market rate or vacate. Either way, this conversation is over. Rebecca sat frozen, unable to argue, unable to win. It was over. Not just the rent battle, but the years of belittling, the constant reminders that I was never enough. The shadow I had lived under my entire life, that shadow was gone, and I was standing in my own light. Later that night, as I sat alone in my apartment, I thought about everything that happened. It was never really about the rent. It was about respect, about boundaries, about finally proving to myself that I was stronger than every label my family had stuck on me. That day taught me something important. Sometimes, the best revenge is not shouting, it is not fighting. It is building. Building quietly. Building consistently. Until the day comes when you no longer need to explain yourself, because the results speak louder than anything you could say. And maybe that is the real lesson here. Do not underestimate the quiet ones. Do not assume the person you look down on is standing still. Sometimes, they are just moving in silence, and when the time is right, they will show you exactly who they are. So let me ask you this. If you were in my shoes, would you forgive Rebecca? Or would you make her pay full market rate with no discount at all? And what about you? Have you ever been underestimated by family, by friends, by coworkers? How did you handle it? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Because these stories are not just about me. They are about all of us learning to stand taller. If this story inspired you, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story. And let me know where you are listening from. I read every single comment. Remember this, respect is not demanded, it is revealed. And sometimes, the most powerful response to disrespect is simply showing that you own the entire building.